Aye, guys. Tonight, we're descending somewhere dark. The kind of darkness that clings to walls centuries after the bodies are gone. A damp, salt-stained silence that lives under stone and breathes with memory. Tourists pass by, sunscreen on their skin, snapping selfies against whitewashed colonial forts. But those castles? They aren't what they seem. You're not walking through a museum tonight. You're entering the underworld hidden beneath paradise. The coast of West Africa shimmers under the sun, waves lapping gently against warm sand. Beneath them, deep beneath, the walls were built for screams. I want to know, when does this kind of nightmare find you? You're standing at the edge of a place where the air was traded for chains, where people were not seen as people, and where the very stones were worn down by bare feet, shackled together. You probably wouldn't survive this, not intact anyway. So before we enter the shadows, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if this kind of darkness is your kind of history. Tell me where you're watching from. Drop your location and the time in the comments below. Now turn off the lights. Maybe lock the door. You wouldn't know it yet, but beneath those sun-bleached battlements lies a network of slave dungeons, narrow and slick with history that refuses to be buried. A guide gestures toward a nondescript staircase in a corner arch. You follow. You're in present-day Ghana, but not the Ghana you know from maps. Not the proud independence, not the kente cloth and Highland music. Each colonial hand shaped the architecture, not for comfort or defense, but for control, for efficiency, for breaking the body and the will. No, this is the 1600s, and you're on the edge of the world's most horrific export system. Let's begin tonight's descent. It begins not in chains, but with a silence too wide to ignore. You step off a creaking boat, skin dry and wind-ridden, into the humid breath of the Gold Coast. Cape Coast Castle stands before you bright in the sun, deceptively clean. Portuguese traders built the early fortresses. The Dutch expanded them. The British finished the design. You cross the threshold into the castle, past cannon barrels and rows of whitewashed walls. But something pulls you downward, a pull like gravity or memory. You don't realize it at first, but this descent is more than physical. With every stone step, the air grows cooler, wetter. From time, from sweat that never dried, from skin long since scraped raw. Not tourists, not historians, not guards, but the chained, the beaten, the stolen. The sunlight thins into gray. The chatter above fades, swallowed by walls 3 feet thick. But intention hardly matters. The result was the same. You start to feel your breath catch, like the air itself is reluctant to be shared. You place your hand on the wall. It's damp. Not from water. The staircase coils downward, and so do your thoughts. Full of the memory of breathing people packed like crates, shoulders against stone, backs against backs, legs twisted into impossible folds. For weeks, sometimes months, not for water, but for urine. For blood, for vomit. For the waste of hundreds crushed into one place like grain in a barrel. You try not to look directly at them, but your eyes can't help it. Some records describe balls, dances, religious sermons being held as hundreds suffered in the rooms below. The same walls, the same structure. You think about the people who walked this path, like it too was taken prisoner centuries ago and never released. Not fully, just fragments. Muffled joy that cut through the darkness like knives. Some say it was intentional. Some say the echo was punishment in itself. Historians still debate whether this architecture was intentionally psychological designed to disorient, to weaken the body and mind before a ship ever sailed. Every step forward is a step into someone else's nightmare. By the time you reach the bottom, the air has stopped moving, not still stopped. You're in a chamber now, not tall, not wide, just full. Your footsteps echo against the damp stone, and it's impossible not to notice. They echo alone. No one responds. No one coughs. No one sobs. But once, every corner of this room held sound. Suffering made audible. There are no windows. A local belief, centuries old, from the Fant people, that spirits who die in captivity cannot cross into the next world unless their names are spoken by the free. Of traders. One small slit in the ceiling lets in light, just enough to remind you of the world above, just enough to torture the idea of freedom. Most remain, preserved, touristed, labeled, but still silent. There are tiny drain holes in the floor, carved centuries ago. And that's when you smell it. Not fresh, not rank. Something older, like rust that once was blood. Like the walls themselves remember the screams. You breathe it in. You don't want to, but you do. Not words, just marks, days, names. Prayers? Even now, no one knows. Your wrists ache. Not from chains, but from imagining them. In the far corner, someone scratches lines into stone. And then comes the irony. Above you, directly above, are rooms where colonial officers dined, drank wine, wrote letters home. Just a floor away, there's a belief, whispered by old guides, that laughter from upstairs was once heard by the captives below. No chains, no whips. Just the sound of someone living as you waited to be sold, as you waited for the gate of no return. You move now, slowly, across the chamber. You pass a plaque, a modern one, with names inscribed. Not of victims. The people remembered here aren't the ones who knelt in these dungeons. They're the ones who built them. Still, there's something else carved here. And you realize this silence might be full of ghosts. One disturbing fact remains inescapable. Even as slave castles fell into disuse and slavery was abolished, few of these dungeons were destroyed. They tell a story in whispers. They echo with everything that was never fully said. And you standing here now are part of that echo. The descent is over, but the darkness has only just begun. You stand now in the first chamber, but your guide gestures forward through a narrow passage, barely wide enough for a person. You duck instinctively, brushing your shoulder against wet stone. The walls tighten. You move slowly, like slipping through a throat carved by centuries. There is no light here, not even the slit above you had before, only the memory of it. The air wraps around your chest like cloth soaked in seawater, heavy, sour, and filled with the ache of too many lungs. You come out the other side into a slightly larger room. Larger, but not freer. You crouch to stand, and in that position bent, head lowered, unable to stretch, you feel it. The first crack of submission. Not demanded, engineered. Here, the ceiling dips low. This chamber is colder, as if the walls do the speaking. Whether the gate of no return was literal in their minds, or just another door. But what's clear is this. The architecture knew. The stone knew. The traders knew. To touch what they touched. And you feel it. Not smooth stone, but porous, pitted dampness. A wall that once wept with the people pressed against it. Beneath your feet, grooves have been worn into the floor by restless chains. Not scratches, depressions. Over hundreds of years, iron and bone were stone like wind carves cliffs. It takes time to make a scar like that. Or desperation. Or both. The guide behind you says nothing now. There are no plaques here. No glass cases. Just the space itself. You find yourself reaching out not for comfort, but to confirm. At your feet, a rusted ring of iron embedded in the floor. Once, a shackle would have been fixed here, attached to a chain, and at the other end of the chain someone like you, or unlike you, someone who screamed, or didn't, someone who survived, or didn't. You wonder what they thought in this room. Did they imagine home? Did they imagine death? Did they believe they'd ever leave? Historians still debate whether captives fully understood where they were going. And this passage was the threshold into nothing. But we're not there yet. Not quite. First, you're moved herded, really into a line. Still underground, still breathless. The corridor narrows again, this time with grooves in both walls, marks of bodies, pressed against either side, shuffling forward in the dark. At a small iron grate. On the other side, another room, this one different. You walk as they did, single file, trying not to touch the slickness on either side. You pause where they once paused. This one is called the condemned cell. Who resisted, in whatever small way resistance could exist in a dungeon. No food, no water, no space. You're not alone in this reaction. Visitors often report chest pain, nausea, even panic attacks in this chamber. There's a term for it in the region. The breath of the past. This cell has no drain, no ventilation. Elders say the stones themselves carry their fury, their unfinished dying. No slit in the ceiling. Just rock, just rot, just death. Maybe they tried to speak. Maybe they wouldn't stop crying. Maybe they kicked, or cursed, or collapsed. Here's where things break. No names, no marks of identity, just the scratching. Silent now, but once constant. It echoes behind your ears like phantom chalk. It connects directly to a church built into the castle's upper level. This room was reserved for those who fought back, who refused. They were thrown in here, they died slowly, and then the cell would be filled again. Not by choice, but the symbolism remains, unasked for, unignorable. The tour, the memory, the dream, whatever this is, it continues forward. And you follow. The body of Christ spoken over the bodies of the broken. The disturbing fact, you step back. Your breath comes shorter now. And here, even today, it lingers. Slowly, deliberately, invisibly. Local folklore claims the condemned were not allowed to die completely. That their souls were so angry, so betrayed, they refused to cross over. Columns stretch from floor to ceiling, placed not for design, but for containment. These columns are pitted too. Not naturally, not from weather. Some whisper that you can hear them if you put your ear to the floor. You don't try it. Instead, you're moved again. You find yourself in a slightly wider chamber. From nails. A fringe belief held by some coastal captors was that a person's will could be removed through their fingernails. So they would scrape the columns endlessly, sometimes until nothing remained but blood and pulp, not as punishment, as preparation, to remove the will. There are no carvings in this room. You look up. Above you is a grate. And for the second time tonight, the horror becomes irony. This grate, unlike the others, is not to let in light, but to let in sound. Yes, while slaves huddled below, moaning, weeping, scratching hymns were sung above them. European officers and missionaries held service. Psalms, prayer. Some say the singing was meant to drown out the noise below. Others say it was to sanctify the trade. Historians still debate whether the dual architecture dungeon beneath chapel was logistical or symbolic. Above, the soul. Below, the body. One to be saved, the other sold. You stand now in the center of this awful alignment. You hear nothing, but it rings. Your knees ache. Your throat dries. You are being prepared. Like they were, because the next place you'll go has a name. It's waiting for you, just a few steps away. It's called the Gate of No Return. The corridor slopes downward again. You sense it before you see it, that something final waits ahead. A narrow hall winds forward, flanked by jagged stones slick with sweat too old to be measured. This path is straight, designed not for comfort, but for process. One way only. Your chains are imaginary, but you feel them anyway. You walk where hundreds, thousands were marched before you, wrists bound, ankles bruised, breath slow. A liminal path. You're not in Africa anymore, not really. But you're not in the Americas yet, either. You're in between, in the belly of something that digests identity. And then, there it is. You try to imagine the last step, the final glance backward, the way sunlight must have burned like betrayal on the skin of those forced through. A stone arch, low, whipped, gagged, and dragged, and then pushed through anyway, heavy. But at night it was shut and bolted, not to keep captives in, but to keep memory from escaping. Covered in shadow, though it faces the sea, the gate of no return. It's not as grand as you thought it would be, just a doorway. But not just a doorway, because it leads to the open mouth of the Atlantic, and beyond that centuries of pain. You stop before it, so that slaves could be presented clean to the buyers waiting on boats, not for their dignity. Narrow, curving slightly, not visible from the men's chambers, deliberately hidden, designed that way. Some fell to their knees here, because tonight your descent is not complete until you've seen the other half of the story. You sense it instantly. This space didn't just hold bodies. It held secrets, terrible, intimate ones. Some had to be carried. Some ran and were caught. Still part of the earth that held them, not the water that stole them. A woman taken from this chamber would be brought up washed, dressed in cloth, and made to entertain a colonial officer. If she resisted, she returned here, beaten, sometimes killed, sometimes sent through the gate the next morning. Inside, one iron ring is bolted to the floor. One, for one woman. It's said the door was sometimes left open during the day to let the heat and smell pass out to sea. A disturbing verified detail. Certain castles, like Elmina and Cape Coast, had built-in mechanisms, hidden stone grooves, and slanted walkways designed to funnel waste and fluids away from this path for value. They were scrubbed, powdered, sometimes oiled, like livestock, like merchandise, but not yet, because you're still inside, still facing the gate. Your foot crosses the threshold. Outside, the sea stares back, but you're not given time to rest. You're pulled to the side, along a different path, the one for women. You enter another low corridor, and even the stone seems ashamed. This was the female dungeon. Smaller, but no less suffocating. The air here is thicker, the silence sharper. Because in this place, power looked different. The same in cruelty, but different in shape. You crouch to enter a tiny cell, no larger than a closet. A local legend passed down along the coast tells of the governor's choice. But if she complied, she might be spared, moved to a separate chamber, fed better food, given slightly more air. She was not free, but she was less unfree. And this, perhaps, is the most disturbing thing. Some women learn to hope for selection, not because they wanted it, but because it was the least terrible outcome. Historians still debate whether this systematic exploitation was orchestrated across forts or improvised by individual officers. But the pattern appears too often to be coincidence. Some of these women gave birth within the dungeons. Children conceived not in love, but in captivity. Mixed-race infants born in a pit carved into empire. A shape that resembles a fishhook, but stylized. Many died. Some were taken, though no one can confirm who carved it, or when, or why. Journals from the 1700s record luncheons, garden walks, and piano recitals taking place directly above the cells. Few were remembered. In the corner of the female dungeon, you find a faint inscription, a symbol, not a word. Some say it's an adinkra, an ancient West African ideogram. This one, it's believed, means hope despite captivity. Still, it's there. Hope ... etched into stone inside a nightmare. The irony, of course, is that while these women languished in silence, Colonial officers and their wives, yes. Wives held tea in the courtyard above. Sound carried. Everything carried. One female traveler from Britain described the slaves as ghosts in the floor, noting the way laughter from above often changed tempo when moaning echoed upward. Still, the gates remained open. Still, the women remained below. And so do you for just one more moment, because now you turn toward the sea again. You pass once more through the gate of no return. And this time, you don't look back. Not because you don't want to, but because that's what it meant to be sold, to be taken, to vanish across the water. No return. Only silence. Only waves. Only memory. The sky is too bright. That's your first thought as you step through the gate of no return. Not freedom, not relief. Just brightness painful, white, and undeserved. Your eyes have adjusted to darkness, to damp stone, to the company of ghosts. The sun feels like exposure. Light punishment. You squint as you're led forward, your feet raw, your ankles numb, your skin still marked from the iron that held you. The dock is ahead, and so is the sea. But there's a pause, first one, last ritual, before the ocean claims you. You're taken to a platform carved into the shoreline rock. A place where surf meets salt, and the sea mist rises like breath from something hungry. You're stripped again, if there was anything left to take. And then you are washed, but not with tenderness. Barrels of salt water are thrown, scooped, rubbed. The goal isn't health. It's commerce. You're being made presentable. You're not a person, not anymore, not in their eyes. Your product, commodity. So they rubbed it in, sometimes with sand, sometimes with lime. The colonial officers believed that a clean slave fetched a higher price at auction across the sea. A grotesque version of polishing silver, as if it mattered. You taste the salt in your mouth, until it bled, until it glowed, until it was marketable. It burns more than it cools. The most disturbing part? There are records ledgers listing the cost of the water used for this rinsing. Human beings reduced to two categories, weight and moisture. It might say Company of Royal Africa, or D.O., for Dutch West India Company, or back, or thigh. They vary it, not for pain, for visibility. Buyers want to inspect quickly. The branding, the washing, the dragging. Not everyone made it to the ship. It might be initials you never knew, or symbols. You are now both. A fringe belief among some European merchants held that salt water could harden the body, preserve its strength for the voyage. Scrubbing skin like wood, you blink. You sway. You hear the creak of rope. Ahead, a boat waits, but not yet. Because before you're loaded, there's branding. Yes, you belong to someone now. You kneel, or you are forced to. The iron is heated in a brazier that hisses with smoke. One mark, or sometimes two, depending on the trader. You hear it first, the sizzle, then smell it, then feel it. You're branded on the chest. You don't scream, not because it doesn't hurt, because the scream won't help. And when it's done, they douse the wound with more salt water. It makes the mark set faster. Some don't survive this moment, but you do. Barely. They bind your wrists again. Not tightly this time, tight enough, just enough to steer. You're led forward, across a gangplank of wood slick with moss and old blood. You're not the first. You never were. The hold of the ship swallows you like a second dungeon, smaller, darker, more final. You are packed shoulder to shoulder, thigh to thigh. It's hotter here, wetter. The air doesn't move. You lie down, and you feel ribs not your own. Breath not your own. It becomes difficult to tell where your body ends. That's the point. You try to mark the moment. To remember it, the salt. A letter. A mark. Not loudly. Quietly. like a thread pulled from behind your eyes. A shift, the heat, the creak of the hull. Not native, European, sung in harmony. A send-off, a benediction, or a mockery. Losses, as if breath and memory were just spoilage. Because you know once you cross this water, your name will vanish. And it does. On paper, you're now a unit, an inventory entry. Some ships kept journals, meticulous logs that noted cargo weight, food rations, and losses. That word again. You feel something break in you. And as the ship rocks, and the light dims, and the sea begins to take you, you hear something. Music from the dock. Above you, a hymn, not African. Historians still debate whether these parting songs were acts of religion or rituals of control. Were they blessings or just sonic propaganda? Either way, they carried out over the watersoft, lilting, civilized. The ship begins to move. You feel it in your stomach first, then your bones. Bright white, towering, peaceful. You try not to cry. Because to cry is to still have hope. And hope, now, is a liability. The last thing you see, through a narrow gap in the ship's hull, is the outline of the castle, shrinking against the sky, as if nothing ever happened beneath it. The sea is not silent. It groans. It shifts. It breathes in ways that mock your own shallow gasps. The ship rocks against the tide, not with grace, but like a coffin resisting the pull of the earth. Above you, the wooden ceiling sweats with condensation, alive with the stench of blood, bile, and bodies too exhausted to rot properly. No chains now, not all need them. The press of flesh does the restraining. Inside, below deck, there is only darkness, and the sound of people trying to survive where survival was not intended. You lie pressed against two others. One weeps softly. One doesn't move. And somewhere in that blackness, you hear it, the low, rhythmic creak of rope pulling taut. You squint through pain and confusion as you're led toward a section of the upper deck. Eyes are studied not for soul, but for sickness. If you're too weak, you're marked. Some are thrown overboard early, before reaching open sea, to avoid inventory loss down the line. It's the sound of movement. The ship is under sail now, headed west away from the coast you'll never see again. But before the voyage has truly begun, another chamber calls. You are selected, yanked upward into daylight like a corpse exhumed too soon. Your eyes sting. The salt spray cuts your branded skin. It's not punishment. If God let them die, they weren't meant to be sold. It's inspection. Here, captains and officers assess the human cargo. They examine bodies like livestock. Teeth are pulled open. Scars are noted. Ships had rotation schedules for who was allowed access to the pen. Officers kept records. Sometimes even debated ownership rights en route. A crude structure, perhaps once used for animals or tools. Water. A blanket. In exchange. It is now the holding pen for women selected by officers for personal use during the journey. It depended on the captain's priorities. That's the phrase that survives in the ledgers. Personal use. It's said that some traders believed drowning the weak before setting sail was a form of divine selection. You are not thrown. Not today. Instead, you're sent to another corner of the deck. A space used for a particular purpose. The female captives. They are here huddled, quiet, wind-chapped, watched. This is no reunion. It's another division. Another stage of humiliation. There's a separate space fenced off from the rest of the ship. It doesn't take imagination to know what it meant. One of the most chilling facts about the Middle Passage is not just the violence, it's the routine, the normalcy, the documentation. And it wasn't always force with chains. Sometimes officers offered food. Historians still debate the psychological layers of this horror, whether these exchanges were coerced consent or simply acts of survival under absolute control. But the outcome was always the same. The women bore it because they had no choice, and when they were no longer wanted, they were returned below deck, or worse, tossed overboard to hide pregnancies. One disturbing belief, still whispered among descendants in the Caribbean, is that some enslaved women deliberately stopped eating, hoping to die quietly, rather than carry a child conceived in horror. Starvation was, at times, their only resistance. You are returned below now, not because you are forgotten, because you are accounted for. You smell gunpowder now faint, but present. The threat of rebellion is always there. The crew knows it. That's why the men are kept separated from the women, why some are muzzled, why others are beaten preemptively, just in case. The ship rocks again. There's a room deeper in the hold, almost no air, no light reserved for those suspected of plotting escape. You hear movement inside, maybe whispers, maybe scratching. You remember the grooves on the dungeon floors. You wonder if they're scratching still. Somewhere overhead, the ship's bell rings. A time signal. It could be morning. It could be night. Time here does not pass in hours. It passes in pain. You begin to understand that the ship is not a passageway. It is an extension of the prison, a floating castle, a mobile dungeon. They're thanking God for calm seas, for strong winds, for the blessing of fortune. Because every structure of control, sexual, racial, violent, religious, was recreated on board. The ocean changed, but the cruelty remained fixed. One scholar once called slave ships colonies in motion. In a cruel irony, you overhear prayers from the officer's deck. No one prays for you, the ones who still echo in the dungeons behind you, or simply because they can't control their body anymore. It soaks into the wood, mixes with seawater, disappears into the hull, except maybe those who already died, the ones who never made it to the ship. You feel a warmth near your feet. Someone has urinated in fear or pain. Nothing remains clean here for long. And as the ship sails into deeper waters, you wonder not if you will die. But how? Not really. You close your eyes and drift. But even in darkness, there is noise. Coughing, crying, shifting, the sound of something ending. You do not sleep. The wind howls through the slats in the ship's side. A few words drift in. A language you don't know, or maybe ... once did. And as you lie there, half awake, half alive, you remember the gate again, and how it didn't slam shut behind you. Because it didn't have to. You were never meant to return. The sea does not care. It rocks the ship with indifference, patient and unfeeling. Storms come, then pass. Sunlight burns, then fades. Days bleed into nights, and still, you remain below, stuck in a purgatory, measured in inches, breaths, and the weight of others pressing it on all sides. You're unsure how long it's been. You count shifts in the air as time. The guards shout hoarse, bored, methodical. You're lifted, herded, blinked into the day. One day, the hatch above creaks open. Light spills down like a weapon, too sudden, too pure for where you've been. This isn't freedom, not to see if you're alive, not to check your teeth or assess your wounds. It's inspection, again, but different this time. Ropes line the railings, hooks dangle from the beams. Buckets slosh with salty foam. A crewman gestures, and you're shoved toward the barrels. Today is about maintenance. They drag you toward the edge of the ship's deck. You are to be washed, again, but to protect the value of the cargo from rot and disease. Those too weak were discarded. But here, in the middle of the ocean, the purpose isn't purity or presentation. It's preservation. You're still cargo, after all. You need to be kept from festering, just long enough to reach market. Another disturbing fact: slave ships often conducted periodic deck scrubbings, forcing captives topside for air, for hosing, for brief movement, not for their well-being. literally discarded. You see it with your own eyes. Two men, ribs like knives, fail to stand when ordered. The captain speaks in a language you don't understand, and the crew responds quickly, efficiently. They are taken to the side of the ship, lifted, wordless, a sound carried across ocean wind, passed down from mother to child, from elder to elder. A resistance no whip could stop. Hummed. The guards order you down again. A vibration in the air, born from desperation or prayer. It spreads mouth to mouth, chest to chest. No rhythm, no language you recognize, and yet it feels older than the ship itself. They don't resist. You grip the railing, not for balance, but to avoid being next, and then they are gone. Overboard. No splash. No ceremony. Just silence, swallowed by waves. No names, no records. Just a small note later in the log. Losses, too. The sea swells against the hull. You flinch as it sprays your skin, striking your fresh branding, reopening the pain. The salt eats into it. Somewhere down below, others sing. It's low. Some call it a death song, not of a person, but of a people. You aren't allowed to linger. Back into the dark. Back into the stench. Back into the hold that groans with every inch of water the ship cuts through. The days that follow stretch. One begins to rot. You don't know his name. He lay 3 bodies over, whispered sometimes in a tongue you could never catch. One morning, he doesn't move. He's left there, for hours, until the smell changes. And he's taken, not with reverence, not even with fear. Just routine. They carry him away like spoiled meat. A superstition among the crew. Bodies that remain on board too long bring storms. Some believe the souls of the dead linger, if not return to the sea quickly. Not for peace, but because the ocean demands its portion. And yet, when storms come, they come anyway. One night, lightning splits the sky. Thunder shakes the bones of the ship. Waves crash high, heavy. You are flung into others, your face struck by a knee or elbow or fist. It's not violence, it's chaos. Human bodies crushed by fear. The entire vessel lists and groans. And in the belly of the hold, panic rises. Someone screams, then another. The chains clink louder now, a rhythm of terror. Water seeps down from above. Not flood just enough to smell like death. The ship creaks. A lantern above crashes and dies. You are in full dark now. And in that moment, drenched, shivering, gagged by the scent of panic, you realize the storm is not the enemy. It's the only thing not trying to own you. You close your eyes and listen. To the rain, to the rope, thrown overboard or taken by wave, no one knows. The crew doesn't say his name, only curses, as if the storm was personal. To the breathing, the name of the river that once ran beside your home. To the silence that follows a scream. When dawn comes, you don't recognize it. And a silence that no washing can remove. You no longer ask yourself if you'll live. Just a subtle change in hue above the slats. The crew is quieter now. A man is missing. Not a captive, a guard. One sailor spits over the side. Makes a sign with his hand. You've seen it before, an old Iberian warding gesture against the spirits of the drowned. The ship is haunted now, they believe. They're not wrong. You are among the ghosts. You've begun to move like one. Think like one, not forward, but inward. You ask if what's left of you is still you, because something has shifted. You can't recall your village, the shape of your mother's eyes. Salt has taken it, so has time, and in its place, only the slow lurch of the sea. The air changes, slightly, subtly. At first, you think it's your imagination, some trick of the sea, another phantom your starved brain has conjured. But then you feel it in your lungs, a different kind of humidity, one thick with land. It's distant, yes, Faint, but it's there. Land. The crew starts moving with more urgency. Commands are barked instead of muttered. The deck groans beneath rapid feet. Crates are shifted. Ropes tightened. The ship is preparing not to arrive, but to present. Because now, you're not just human cargo. You're merchandise on display. The morning they bring you above deck is gray, overcast. The sky matches the sea. Your skin, bruised and branded, is stiff from salt and neglect. But you're lined up still. The crew splashes buckets of seawater across your body, not to clean, but to simulate vitality. They rub your skin with oil or animal fat to give it sheen. Life, value. It doesn't matter what you feel. You must look alive. The disturbing truth? In some ports, traders painted sores and open wounds with chalky mixtures to conceal disease. They'd stuff cloth in mouths of the nearly dead to give them color. One captain wrote of using red palm oil to make dying slaves appear freshly fed. Presentation and price. Price meant everything. They check your teeth again, not for your sake, for theirs. A small, shivering corner of your brain still hopes for survival, even if that survival means bondage. You try to stand taller, not out of pride but instinct. One adjusts a monocle and makes a note in his book. A rope ties you to the one in front of you. You wait. You see children clinging to mothers, pointing. Curious. Some captives whispered to the dying, "Hold on, or your spirit won't know where to go." And then you see it. Land. Not the land you know. Not the red earth of home. This is pale, crowded with structures and smoke. The dock is lined with men in coats. Some wear hats. Some carry ledgers. They wait not with welcome, but with calculation. It is still, dead still. And it feels wrong. He has soft shoes, a thick coat despite the heat. He raises a hand. You are steered herded off the ship. Some stumble. Some are struck. You stay upright. As you step onto the dock, your ankles tremble. Not from weakness, but confusion. The ground does not sway beneath your feet. There are barrels, crates, stalls. This is no reception. It's a market. And you're walking through it. The auction block is nearby raised, stained, crowded by onlookers. Some chew sugarcane. Some laugh. You're lined up again. Hands behind your back. One woman collapses. A guard lifts her arm, lets it drop. She's dragged away. No one follows. A fringe belief among the enslaved in the Caribbean told of a place beyond the docks where those who died after arrival would haunt the plantations restless, incomplete. But for the living, no such confusion. A man climbs the platform. The bidding begins. They don't speak your language, not the one you remember, but you understand what's happening. Each gesture is a sentence. Each coin is a verdict. Each silence is a sentence passed. Your turn comes, you're pushed onto the block. Arms raised, nods. He's familiar with that mark, knows the company, trusts the source. Mouth pried open. Your thigh is slapped. You are turned like meat, measured, assessed. Handed off. Now you must wear the mark of your new owner. The iron is smaller this time, hotter, pressed just below the first one. Another rope, another walk, another unfamiliar voice. One man points to your branding. The bidding ends quickly. You are sold. No papers are shown to you. No explanation given. You are pulled from the line. And then branding again. Yes, again. Because the mark of the ship owner isn't enough. One over the other. Your skin peels where they intersect. Historians still debate whether dual branding was a means of erasing previous ownership or asserting new dominion. But in practice, it did both. And it hurt more. You do not cry. There is no one left to hear it. You are given a scrap of cloth, food that tastes of mold, water that tastes of blood. You are herded into a cart with other strangers branded like you, and then you begin the next journey, not across sea, but inland to the plantation, to the field, to the place where your name, your language, your history, everything will be rewritten, if not erased. But something small remains, inside you, beneath the brand, behind the stare, something they didn't wash away, couldn't. You don't know what it is, but it breathes, slowly, steadily, waiting, like memory that refuses to die. You do not see the castle again, not physically, but it follows you. Its stones, its damp, its cruelty etched beneath your skin. Even now, on foreign soil, the air still smells faintly of rusted iron and the damp rot of subterranean cells. You think of the stairway down, and you wonder if you ever truly came back up. The man beside you mumbles in a language that rolls like thunder, deep and slow. He's older, scarred across the scalp. You don't understand him, but you nod anyway. The cart jostles forward. You lie against wood. No ropes now, just exhaustion. Long, endless rows. Sugarcane, tobacco, cotton. Each stalk stands taller than the man driving your cart. It feels like respect. The plantation is far inland. The sky thickens with smoke. The trees begin to disappear. In their place rows, you arrive. There's no welcome, just commands. Gloves to keep their hands soft while yours crack in the sun. And eyes. The overseers. They watch from porches, from balconies, from shaded stoops. Wealth dresses in linen here. White collars. Parasols. But it's not their gaze that cuts deepest. Hold books in one hand, whips in the other. They speak in English, French, Dutch, sometimes Portuguese. The accents change, but the intent is constant. It's the Europeans who work above you, but not beside you. They wear hats tilted forward. You are property, dug behind the quarters, covered in slats, then straw. No one speaks of it during the day, but at night, when the wind changes, you hear them. You are labor. In some estates, punishment cells were constructed beneath the master's quarters sounds, muffled by rugs and chamber music. That distance between brutality and banality was intentional. You are silence, and if you are not, then you are an example. A strange, unsettling fact. European men often lived directly above torture spaces on plantations. One guest once asked an owner if the screaming from below disturbed him. He replied, "Greater than only when it keeps the dogs awake." You hear this from another captive. She's thin, hollow-eyed, missing 3 fingers. She doesn't say how. Her voice is a whisper. Her story, half-truth and half-memory. But you believe every word, because later you see it for yourself. The punishment cell is a pit. Groans, pleading, metal on bone, the castle may be gone. But its design lives on. There's a church nearby. That irony isn't lost on you. A bell rings each morning. A white steeple, fresh paint. A master's wife attends in perfume and lace. The priest preaches of grace, speaks of salvation, and breaks bread with the very men who buy and brand human beings. On Sundays, you are made to kneel, not in prayer, but to scrub floors. And when the congregation exits, their shoes dry and clean, they nod at you. A few even smile. The children sometimes ask if you can talk. One boy offers you a coin if you dance. You don't. He throws it at you anyway. It bounces against your chest and rolls under the porch. You don't pick it up. A fringe belief among some enslaved West Africans held that coins used in humiliation carried curses, not for the victim, but for the giver. The boy's mother slaps him, not for cruelty, but for wasting money. The weeks turn to months. A notch in the fence shaped like an arrow. A bruise on your shoulder that strangely never fades. The days blur. You find patterns, small ones, to keep yourself tethered. a certain bird that sings at dusk. It reminds you of home, or the version of home that still flickers, like a nearly dead flame. One evening, a fire is lit not by you, but near you. A hut burns on the edge of the field. Not killed, no. Death is too simple. There's no alarm, no panic, just punishment. Someone tried to run. They were caught. Instead, they are brought back, publicly, naked, bloodied, hung by the arms for all to see. Their feet don't touch the ground. The overseer reads from a sheet of paper. You don't know the words, but you know the meaning. This is what happens. It is not a warning. It is a policy. And yet, something cracks that night, not in the punished, in the watchers. Someone mutters. Another turns their head. One captive spits barely, but it's enough. It's not rebellion, not yet, but it's something. A small pulse, a breath, a shift. That night, you dream of the castle again. Only this time, you're not inside. You're standing above it, on the parapet, looking down at the courtyard. Below, the guard paces. Over your ancestors, over every cell carved into the earth. A rusted key hangs from his belt. He doesn't see you, but you see everything. You wake, sweating. It's a memory that isn't yours, or maybe one that waits to be. Historians still debate whether enslaved people passed coded messages through songs, stories, and dreams, tools of survival when language was stolen. What's known for certain is this: even in silence, resistance persisted. You sit upright. The stars above are the same ones that hung over your village. You whisper to them, not for rescue, but remembrance, because the overseers can claim your back, but they will never own your sky. The plantation has its rhythm now, a cruel one, but rhythm nonetheless. You wake before light, you bend before heat, you eat only what's left. You sleep when exhaustion overcomes pain, not when the day ends. And yet, something inside you still listens to footsteps, to wind, to the tone in an overseer's voice before the whip cracks. You've learned to hear what no one says aloud. And one night, you hear whispers, low, tense, urgent, not from the cabins, not from the huts, from beneath. A slight slope behind the main quarters leads to what looks like a shed, nothing remarkable, but a rotted trapdoor lies beneath the wood. Its latch rusted, the hinges long betrayed by time. You follow them in silence, barefoot through ash-dusted dirt. Someone lifts it, someone who remembers. And what you see, what they show you, is not new. It is old. It is a room not meant for sunlight, earth-packed walls, bones buried shallow. The smell, thick and cloying, reminds you of the slave dungeons beneath the castles. But smaller, hungrier. This isn't punishment space. This is history buried alive. Because under this plantation, under many of them, there are remnants not just of brutality, but of ritual. Ash, charcoal, tools not for labor, but for restraint. Here lies the story the owners never wrote down. It was never to be worn, only buried, hidden, or cast into rivers. And near the back, buried in soot, a pendant made of bone and gold dust. You see an iron shackle driven into stone, a child's anklet, a rosary. The others with you say nothing, but their silence is loud. A fringe belief among the enslaved held that certain gold, when mixed with ash from the tortured, could be used in spiritual warfare. But this pendant had not been buried. It had been worn. You hold it in your palm. It's warm, though no heat surrounds you. The air is still. But they couldn't forget what they did. Each window, each step. He glances at the house more than usual. His ledger remains tucked under his arm, unopened. He asks if anyone saw a trespasser last night, not to keep, but to remember. You know where the master sleeps, where the dogs are kept, where the good dishes are stored, almost waiting, Above you, the house is dark, but you know it's shaped by heart. You know everything, and you realize you are not the first to know. One of the others speaks, her voice brittle, greater than they made us forget, and that is the difference. You return to your hut, pendant in hand. You wrap it in cloth, hide it beneath your mat. The next day, the overseer seems agitated. No one answers, but the air feels heavier. That evening, during inspection, someone kicks loose a floorboard near the master's wine cellar. Underneath, bones, dozens, arranged, clean, too clean. He orders it sealed, not investigated, not reported, just sealed. Historians still debate whether these bone chambers were remnants of ritual, mass punishment, or simple disposal. But what they do agree on is this: the evidence was meant to be hidden. You work another week, then another, and the dreams return. Not just yours, but others too. Those who went with you into the pit. One says she saw herself running, but in the uniform of a housemaid, not a field slave. Another dreamed of cutting cane with a blade made of glass. A man says he walked through the castle again, but this time the doors opened on their own. Something is stirring. Not rebellion. Not yet, but memory. And memory is dangerous. You hear the term whispered among the captives, greater than ash gold. They say the Europeans feared it. They say that's why the castle dungeons were kept dry, to keep the dead from rising. They say that's why the cellars beneath plantations were salted, so nothing could grow, not even truth. But here, in this place, something has grown. A story, one no whip can unmake. You watch the overseer again. This time, he flinches at a sound that isn't there. You catch his eye. You don't look away. Time bends, or maybe it frays. The days blur like charcoal lines in water. You cannot remember when the harvest started, only that it has not yet ended. The cane keeps growing. So must your silence. But underneath that silence, the castle hums. It's not real knot anymore, but it's everywhere. In the shape of the walls. The smell of damp stone that rises when the soil is wet. In the way your limbs ache at night, as if the shackles are still there, pressing deep into flesh long freed. And the others feel it too. They don't say castle. They say below. As in, greater than I dreamed, I was back below. There was a woman below who never blinked. The babies below had no sound. The word castle is too grand. What they remember was cavity, not fortress. One morning, the sun rises late. The sky stays dim. Clouds smother light, and the air tastes like old copper. No one speaks as the overseers bark. Something about a missing shipment, a missing man, or so it seems. And then you see the pendant again, but not in your hut. High, deliberately displayed, its gold glinting like accusation. No cloth, no cover, as if someone wanted everyone to see. It's been nailed to a post. Your stomach sinks, because they know. Or worse, they believe. A priest is brought in, not one you've seen before. He wears black, speaks Latin, and walks the plantation like a man expecting to meet the devil at any moment. He orders prayers. Salt is scattered. Just gone. One hut is burned, no explanation. The woman who lived there is gone. Historians still debate whether these religious interventions were spiritual warfare or performative, power exorcisms of guilt rather than ghosts. Either way, the message was clear. We know what you remember. But the fear they tried to sow grows in them instead. They hum songs in minor keys that don't match the field rhythms, but feel ancient. The master grows pale, drinks more. The overseers strike faster, but avoid the cellars. Even the dogs grow anxious, barking at empty spaces. You notice, too, how quiet the whip has become. Not absent, just hesitant. Because fear travels two ways. The captives begin to murmur again. Not in defiance, but in truth. They tell stories of those who ran and vanished, not caught, not punished, just disappeared. They whisper names they were forbidden to say. One night, an old man tells you something. He doesn't look at you as he says it, doesn't blink, just stares into the firelight and mutters, "Greater than the castles were never built by kings. They were built by shadows who fed on kings." You ask what he means. He does not answer, but you don't forget it. Because now, when you walk the grounds, the air changes near certain corners. Wood creaks even when no one steps. Flies gather where there's no flesh. One window upstairs is always open. No matter who closes it, the house feels watched. And not just by you. That night, rain falls hard, too hard. The ground softens. Erosion claws at the earth's memory. And beneath one of the sloped hills behind the smokehouse bones rise, not skulls, teeth, hundreds, tiny, browned by age. Some filed sharp, in the way certain West African tribes once prepared the dead not to frighten, but to preserve their power into the afterlife. The plantation tries to cover them, but the story's already loose, just present. The captives walk past that spot with their heads high, not smiling, not weeping, like witnesses, like heirs. The overseers stop barking, even the priest leaves, and still the teeth rise. No more pendants are nailed up, no more huts are burned, just a steady, quiet knowing that whatever was below has come up, and it will not go back down, not now, not ever. Wind down. You are no longer beneath stone, no longer chained, no longer silenced, but the echoes remain, like salt in the air, like ash caught in the fold of memory. They live in the walls, the soil, the spaces between things, in castles renamed as monuments, in museums that forget to mention the cellars, in cities built on bones too quiet to scream. You may leave this story, but it does not leave you. It clings, and that is the curse and the gift of remembrance. Because the forgotten places, the buried places, the haunted places, ... They are only forgotten if you let them be. You return to your room, to your screen, to your time. You are not in the castle. You are not on the plantation, but you carry the echo now. And sometimes that's how haunting works best. The past does not always need footsteps. Sometimes it just needs memory. Sometimes it just needs silence, filled with knowing. So breathe, blink, feel the warmth of now, the softness of the world that surrounds you, the sound of your own breath, a freedom denied to so many. And as you drift from this shadowed space, ask yourself, what do your walls remember? What stories sleep beneath your floorboards? What would rise? If you let it,